to the Rock Solid Families podcast. I am Linda Hutchison here with man of the hour, Merle. Hi, honey.
Why am I the man of the hour?
Because
Linda?
As we're recording, we are about to enter the weekend of Father's Day, but it's also...
Actually, it's the weekend of me.
It's the weekend of Merle, because the day before Father's Day is your birthday.
Yes, it is.
So, which you always say you felt like you got ripped off because they are so always close together. Father's Day.
But I stopped saying that when we had Cameron, our son,
yes,
who had his birthday on Christmas
Day.
So I had to stop whining because I'm talking about getting robbed.
Because he can't run away from that date. That is always going to be, at least Father's Day does shift.
Yeah.
But you're going to be listening to this after your birthday and Father's Day, so I'm sure you've been blessed with all kinds of gifts, and your daughter said she's got you two gifts.
I'm afraid to know.
Birthday and Father's Day, so she is on it. So, but what are we talking about today? Because we kind of are. This actually goes with our topic.
Yeah, it is, and maybe a little bit after, but the idea of like what, we do the Strong Dad show, right? On not you
not
and I,
we, yes,
but Rock Solid Families also helps produce the Strong Dad show, and we oftentimes talk about dad stuff, and we're going to talk today about, well, what does a real man, a strong dad, a father, what does he really look like? Some really interesting stuff. I know I just said I watched the Band of Brothers. And I watched the Band of Brothers
you didn't say that
series
here.
Again. No, but I said it to you about 5 times. And
during your knee recovery, 10 hours.
Yeah. Well, I had to prop it.
That's right. You have to sit.
Yeah, and so, but sometimes that generation is referred to as the greatest generation. And if you go back and you look at the statistics, 70% of kids had both parents in the home. 70% back in the 1930s.
What's the statistic today?
And now that statistic is down, depending on really your neighborhood and your culture. It could be in the 40s, 30s, 20s, and even lower. Yeah, so it kind of really just depends. The point is it's about half of what it was, and dropping like a rock. And so, you maybe used to be able to point your finger at different neighborhoods, inner city or whatever, and say, man, look at that poor city. Look what's going on to those families. But it's widespread now. I mean, you can go out into the rural areas. You can go to the ghetto downtown. It just doesn't matter. All of the same things are happening when the dad leaves, or when we have what I'll refer to as a bad dad. All the same symptoms seem to come out of that. And so what we're going to talk about today is, hey, we need our dads, we need our strength, but what does that really look like? So what would it look like, even if you're in a divorce situation, right? I mean, we'd like to avoid that, but we do know those happen. Even if that's the case, what would the behavior and the character of the dad look like?
Yeah, and I know this show is going to trigger some women, some ladies who did not have a father in the home, or like you said, a bad dad who really wasn't emotionally present, maybe physically there, maybe even provided for them physically, but emotionally were disconnected or even harmful, were abusive. And so if that's your story, then we want you to keep listening, because here's what we know. If you don't have a good dad story, if you didn't have a strong dad in the home with you growing up, the tendency and the likelihood of what you're going to choose and what you're going to do and put in your life, whether it be with a spouse, boyfriend, even raising children, is going to be harder. And so we want to give you, that's part of the work we do. We know there's a lot of people that did not experience healthy growing up. They come into our office every day and they'll say, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know how to be a good husband. I don't know how to be a good dad.
Right.
And so we're trying to give you some resources, and this is one of them. What does a strong dad look like? And we're going to God's word to find out.
Yeah. There's something that comes to mind, like what we see a lot in our culture and our generation today. And I have a little saying that I use in my work sometimes, and that is, boys create babies and men raise the babies, so just about any young, and I say boy, childlike mind, once he is of puberty age and beyond, he can produce a child, but that's not really what the significant matter is about. It's like, well, what are you going to do once you produce that child? So who's going to raise it? And so that's really where the character traits of the man come in. But
Yeah.
before we get there, let's thank our sponsors. Yeah. We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. We also want to just thank all of you who listen and continue to share our shows to others. Right now, stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing and hit the subscribe button. Okay, it'll take you all of a few seconds. Hit the subscribe button so that helps not just bring it up onto your feed, but it also helps generate more energy and focus onto the search engines that our show is worth looking at and for others. So stop it right now, and hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, well, we're not going to read the whole story of the prodigal son or the story of the lost son, sometimes it's said, but you can find this story in Luke chapter 15. And if you don't know the story, basically, a father had...
Give us the paraphrase. Yeah.
A father had two sons, and one of them kind of followed the rules and did what he was told. And, and the other son was a rebellious son, and he wanted his inheritance ahead of time. He basically was wanted to kind of go live his way, right? And so his dad gave him his inheritance. And that other son, that prodigal son, went and just kind of lived it up and kind of spent it all. And then found himself literally in a pig's pen, literally feeding among the pigs, and realized, what the heck have I done? Right? And while the other brother was home doing his job, right? And so the prodigal son comes home, the father opens his arms and receives that son and literally throws a party for him. Because he thought he was dead. He thought he had lost his son forever. And he received that son with love. And then we have the other brother who was resentful and bitter and jealous that, hey, I've done this the right way. And you're giving him a party. And so there's a lot of different dynamics here. And we're today going to really focus on the father here. We have different characters. And
by the way, it's a parable, guys. And so remember what the parable is not a true story. It is a story where Jesus is trying to put a human understanding on God, either qualities or desires that he wants for us or our behavior. And so in this case, the father actually is manifesting the role of God, the Father. God the Father. So he's really describing here how he is going to be, right? And so...
with us.
With us.
Either son, I was the rule follower.
Yeah.
And so I would kind of get jealous at how people were succeeding or being rewarded for bad behavior when I followed the rules.
Right.
And, and so I kind of had that other brother syndrome, and then, you were the prodigal. No, I'm just kidding. You were the good kid too. But,
I had my moments.
I had my moments too. I wasn't that perfect for sure. But, so he really is trying to show us, Jesus tells the story to help us understand how our Heavenly Father loves us and how he treats us as his children.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the characteristics. And we say these because even though we want these characteristics for our dads out there, these are actually for all of us, and especially you in a parental role. Okay. And so this first one is kind of I'll say the old standby. You hear this all the time, especially in the parenting and really the Christian world. The father is one of unconditional love. Unconditional love. So no matter how much this young punk son of his is rebelling and probably had, just such a chip on his shoulder, give me my money, I'm out of here, I'm sick of all of you. So no matter how harsh and hard that kid came out, the father he still loved the kid. Now, we want to be clear here. We're not talking about loving the kid's choices.
Right.
This is not, okay, honey, I think this is okay that you do this. That's not what we're saying. That's permissiveness, and that's another side of bad parenting.
And affirming, which this world today is, if you don't affirm what I do, you don't, agree with my choices, then you hate me. And so we're not saying that, because, this happens a lot with families today where a child can rebel against a parent's faith and, their beliefs. And so if they step outside, some parents will disown them.
Right.
They will literally cut them off. And I'm just telling you, as a follower of Jesus Christ, that is not what he's asking us to do. This story completely tells that. He allows the child to make those choices, whether he agrees with them or not, but that the unconditional love is still there. And so please, mom and dad, you're going to have kids who rebel against your faith and don't agree with your decisions and belief systems. But that doesn't mean you should reject them or, some people would say you're dead to me because you don't believe in my God or you don't follow God's rules. And that's not how God works.
Yeah. We want to be cautious here too, to say, hey, in a parenting role, Lynn and I do believe in calling out the sin or the potential choice that's going to be made. Like when we're talking to our 16-year-old and he gives us what he wants to go do, if we don't agree with it, it's not that we're going to sit back and go, okay, just bite our tongue. We're going to say, no, we really don't think that that's a good idea or that's a good choice. And so we still are addressing the choices. We're addressing, the possible decisions. But at the end of the day, we have to be careful. You and I both been guilty of this, hon, where you get so mad, you get so angry, a choice has been made, and an action has been taken, and you say something like, you're ridiculous for doing this. And we have to be careful because that's putting a whole bubble of ridiculous around the entire person.
It's shaming them.
Right, but you're characterizing that entire person.
Right.
You are stupid. Yeah. You are dumb. You are a loser. You are, you as a person versus, what you're getting ready to do is not a very smart decision. Okay. Yeah. So again, unconditional love, don't get it confused. It's not this permissiveness of you just nodding your head yes to everything that your kid wants to do.
Yeah. I talk all the time because women come in feeling that shame. They're heaped with shame. And so guilt is, I made a mistake. And so you can say, no, that was wrong, or, that's not allowed in our home. Okay, guilt. But then the shame is, you are a mistake. And so that's what we don't want to say. Like you said, the choices versus the person. So the unconditional love is one thing that the prodigal son's father really showed us in this story.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the second one. Yeah. So our God, the Father, and us as parents and our fathers, we are, and I'm going to put some disclaimers on this. This Father allowed the existence and function of free will. Okay, and man, that's hard.
It's hard.
That is so hard,
especially for adult children over the age of 18, where they can make those decisions and you have no control over it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're in your home still, and so that's a hard thing. Like, okay, are we going to let this in our home? Right. Okay, you have free will. Even teenagers who think they know everything, right? Like. Yeah. Do we let that happen? So.
Yeah, and so my disclaimer that we're putting on this is, guys, don't think this is, well, whatever Junior wants to do. That goes back to that permissiveness.
Yeah.
We oftentimes talk about the age of accountability, right? The age of accountability, and the age of accountability really starts to go into the idea of, okay, you're explaining what you're doing. I'm going to explain to you the potential consequences. You have recognized and show that you understand those consequences. Okay, you realize if you do this, you'll lose your phone for the next week. You realize this. And if your kid says, I know I'll lose my phone. Then at that point, you start to let the free will happen. Okay, so the age of accountability or the age of understanding of what is coming their way is what we're talking about. And if your kid can actually grasp that, then you say, okay, then we're going to let this roll, okay? And especially as we get into those teen years and those late teen years, it's hard, but that's when we let go more and more, where we're saying, hey, okay, as long as you know.
And you bring up a great point of the age of accountability. Unfortunately, as parents, we have become so permissive and stepped back in our role in such a big way when it comes to things that are scary and unhealthy for them as young children. And I'm talking mostly about social media and the World Wide Web. And like age 6 and 7, those kids are saying, well, I want a phone. I know I can take care of it. And then we just let them do it. And they're not ready.
Right.
That is not a healthy decision as a parent. Okay. We're not talking about a 6-year-old. We're talking about a 16-year-old who should understand and yes, is going to be held accountable and is at the age of accountability. And so we got to be careful at what age we kind of let go. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, then that would lead us to the third point. Okay. And so I wrote down as the little title for this point is patient trust versus aggressive chase. And so this is just that whole idea of sometimes when we're working with parents and we see that things with their teenagers especially are really going down the tubes quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, especially when we have divorce situations where the parents start to get played against each other, and you even have this thing called parental alienation where you have parents working and
against each other.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, this kid is like almost saying to one of their parents, "You are dead to me."
Yeah.
And the parent who's getting hurt by this is just, they don't know what to do. Like, do I just sit back and let this happen? Or do I double down and no matter what, okay, then I'm going to hold back all of your allowance. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to do that. And they aggressively chase to want to grab them and saying, you will be in a relationship with me. And the point being here is sometimes you got to play the long game. And in the prodigal son story, you have the father who shows us the wisdom of looking for the long game.
Yeah.
And this takes trust and faith, right? Like this dad did not run after. He did not try to threaten.
Shame and guilt.
You're right.
Yeah.
He did not do these things. I'm sure, the reality of it is any of us would be like, oh my gosh, what can I do to convince you otherwise? But he lets them go. And at that point, he trusts.
I probably would have had some sleepless nights. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the reality is, we would roll and toss and turn. And I think even God probably rolls and tosses and turn on us like,
are you ever going to get it?
Yeah, like how long do I have to be patient with you? So that's that patient trust versus that aggressive, I'm just going to chase you. I'm going to force you back into the relationship with me.
Good point. Practice patience. The fourth one is unending desire for restoration. And man, I'm telling you, this is such an important one because when our hearts get hardened, whether that person comes back with remorse or repentance or changes their ways, sometimes we've said, you're dead to me.
Yeah.
There's no hope of restoration. And God is going to judge us in that moment.
Yeah.
Because that is where we've got to stay ready and willing for restoration. Again, there's a huge difference between forgiveness and trust. And so you may not trust a word they say. They may, have to prove to them that they can be trustworthy. Maybe they're in addiction, or maybe there's been betrayal. But the desire, we've got to keep our hearts softened toward the thought of restoration, like the prodigal son's father did.
Yeah, and he keeps wanting it, right?
Yeah.
He keeps wanting it to the end, and it's always that desire, it's a hunger that fathers have. They want to make things right with their kids. Okay, so number 5 is don't get it confused with unconditional love, although it probably falls under an umbrella, but this is unconditional forgiveness. So you may always love your kid, but once your kid starts to come back around, sometimes we want people to pay for what they've done that hurt us. And so we even look at, our younger kids, and when they've done something wrong, we'll say, well, before you do anything, you need to apologize. You put a demand, and I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad, but in this case of the prodigal son, it would have been so easy for the father to let the son come up the road and the father to go out with excitement, and just being very earnest to see his kid. But to say, hey, son, before I can really let you in,
rub his nose in it.
You need to say a few things. Like you need to own your part, and you need to show me that you've owned your part. And God's not doing this here in this case. He's doing an unconditional forgiveness. He doesn't even, the son wants to tell him how he's done everything wrong, and he's sorry for what he's done, but like the father's not even demanding any of that stuff. Yeah. And so the idea here is when your kids are ready to come into relationship with you, be really careful about having your checklist of the things that they have to do to be back into your good graces, right? We don't earn the good graces. Yeah. God gives those with that unconditional forgiveness. So
that's a good point.
This is
it's not like you have to sit there for a 3-hour lecture before,
we may have done that at a time too.
I'm feeling convicted for sure. But a strong dad is going to do the things that the prodigal son's father did. And that is that unconditional respect, knowing that God has forgiven him much. And so God has forgiven us much. And so he's calling us to forgive much. Still, trust has to be earned, right? And that's something we work on. But the love and the forgiveness is unconditional. And man, that's a strong dad. And that's a hard thing to be. I gotta, you and I both admit, like, that's hard for us sometimes as humans, but this is what our Heavenly Father does to us, and that's what He's asking us to do to others, especially our children.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to this last point, and the last one is, it is so important that we celebrate the work of God, and that we celebrate sometimes when we see a kid finally come back in, or we see a marriage finally restored, and sometimes we want to give credit to all the people, but and we do need to give credit to people because it's them that decides whether they're going to let their heart be open to it. But God works on people's hearts. He keeps giving this gnawing of, I just need to make it right. I need to make it better. And when you have restoration, celebrate it. Celebrate it. There are angels cheering in heaven for every saved person, right? And so every time there's a baptism, there's like an angel party, And so the idea here is, we should celebrate these things, and we should let our kid know that, man, when you came back, it was amazing. It was awesome. And so that keeps the excitement going. It keeps the energy going, and it keeps kind of the thanks. With the celebration, there's always a thanks. Man, thank you for this happening. Now let's have some fun.
Yeah. Honey, that's so funny as you're describing that celebration. I'm thinking of a lot of couples who have been betrayed. One partner has walked away, has betrayed their partner, and the way that other partner received that, whether their heart was softened and they were willing to forgive and willing to love and willing to receive them back and restore the relationship, that is just a picture of the gospel. And I love this. So it's not just a father-son relationship. It is really any relationship that is important to you. And when there's been betrayal, when there's been people that have deserted you or abandoned you, and there's a lot of adults right now who are walking around with hurt still from abandonment and rejection, whether it be by a spouse, whether it be by a parent, and that has really hardened their hearts and kind of created these defense mechanisms. And I'm just telling you, that healing is possible. I've seen it. We've seen it.
Yeah.
And that's what God wants for us. So please let the story of the prodigal son be a message to you, whether you're a father or, have a father in your life or not right now, but that is something we can be in relationship with anybody.
Yeah. I'm going to put a little note on this too. And why is this the prodigal father, or the story of the prodigal son, and discussing and centering around the father and not the mother? Because, we've talked about parenting, and it's not that to all shortchange the mother at all in any of this. But it also speaks to the strength of the father in these young boys' life in this story. The strength of the father that you see. And that's why we see, and I started the show with the idea that 70% of the families had mom and dad both in the house. And now we're down with, dads trickling in and out kind of as at will. And is that father figure that has left the story of the prodigal son. They've just left and left moms up there to try to figure it out. And so I think it's really essential to understand that it is the strength of dad. It's the masculine strength that these kids are going to, they're going to look at, and they're going to respond to differently. Man, if dad's upset, or if dad's loving me, like whatever dad's doing is coming with a little higher level of just whatever connection to the kids.
Yeah, so important. So hopefully this helps. Again, this is kind of our series on parables. We are going to be entering a series soon on questions from the audience. So if you have a question for us, you can actually submit it anonymously. You can go to our Facebook page, and there's a little spot where you can enter your question, and we can address it on air. And so maybe it's something you're embarrassed, shameful to come in and talk. We've gotten some good ones already. Yep. But if you want it to be addressed on the air, please submit it. You can, again, go to our Facebook page and find that question and answer series, and we would love to answer your questions.
Yeah, looking forward to those. Those are always, those are good shows because they're actually real. Somebody's out there listening going, hey, that's my question. So that's good. Sure.
So we thank you so much for listening to the Rock Solid Families podcast. If you are listening to us and you need some parenting help, we've talked about parents today. We actually do a monthly parenting class called Families Rock every fourth Saturday of the month at the Lawrenceburg Firehouse in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And the next one is June 22nd. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's always the fourth Saturday at 8:30 to 12. You can find more information on our website at rocksolidfamilies.org.
All right. So thanks to Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solution, and the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. So again, thanks for listening to the Rock Solid Family Podcast, building stronger communities, one family at a time. Make it a great day. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.